Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A Brush with Death. I'm your host, Miss Casey Hanalei, and in this series I sit down, I tell you a true crime story, and I paint you a pretty picture at the same time. Now, if you never want to miss one of my terrible stories, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you will get notified whenever I post a new episode. So, like always, I love to introduce our special guest before we get into the terrible cases. And today it is Miss Marilyn Monroe again. So say hi, Marilyn, again. She is lifting weights in this piece I did back in 2015, so 10 freaking years ago. And weightlifting comes back in this case, so it does have something to do with the case. All right, so who are we discussing today? We are talking about Mr. Grant Amato and the murder of almost his entire family. So let's get into it, guys. Okay. Grant Amato was born May 20th, 1989, in Orlando, Florida. He had two siblings, an older brother, Jason, and a younger brother, Cody. And he was born to his parents, Chad and Margaret Amato. So Chad, the dad, he was born in 1959. He was a clinical pharmacist with extensive experience in various healthcare settings, including retail, hospital, home health, specialty, and long-term care. So smart cookie over here. He graduated from the University of Florida, initially pursuing industrial chemistry, before transitioning to pharmacy, which was influenced by his father's advice. Chad was known for his leadership and his dedication to adapting to evolving healthcare landscapes. So not only was he a dedicated healthcare provider, basically a pharmacist, he was also a very dedicated father, we will see. Margaret, the mother, was born in 1957. She served as a senior operations manager, and they married in April 1987. So, and then just a few years later, Mr. Grant was born. But overall, it seemed like they had a really good marriage and a relatively happy life up until the events of this case. So it's just really sad to see. But I did want to give you a little background on the parents. I think that's important. I didn't get a lot of information on the older brother, Jason, but Cody is Grant's younger brother, and they seem to be the closest out of the three. The brothers shared a very close bond throughout their entire lives, up until Cody's death. During their time at Timber Creek High School, they both developed an interest in health and fitness, leading them to join the weightlifting team together. Hence why Marilyn Lifting Weights is joining us today. And also, too, I think probably their father's profession had a lot to do with influencing their interests, right? So I just thought that was interesting. This shared passion extended into their college years at the University of Central Florida, where they both pursued nursing degrees. After completing their nursing programs, Cody advanced his career by becoming a nurse anesthetist, which I think is how you say that, while Grant also pursued further studies in the same field, but unfortunately did not complete the same program. So I'm wondering if this is where maybe the hard feelings started. I'm not sure. It seemed like Grant had a really good childhood. There was no signs of abuse anywhere, no reports of it. Not even in the trial, Grant didn't even say that. So it's just interesting, like where is this coming from, right? Anyways, so beyond their professional aspirations, Cody and Grant enjoyed traveling together as well, with trip destinations like Japan, reflecting their shared interests and close relationship. So, like I said, they were really close up until the end. So it seemed like Grant had a lot of support. So it just makes you even more confused of, after everything is said and done, like, why? Why did you do this? June 18th, Grant is suspended from his nursing job at Advent Orlando on suspicion of improperly administering medication, stealing medication, and for an alleged suicidal thoughts. He is later fired, which, like, if someone is having suicidal thoughts, I feel like the last thing you should do is probably fire them, but, like, that's just me, you know. And although he is arrested for grand larceny from the medications, the charges are eventually dropped. So probably like insufficient evidence, or maybe they felt bad for him. I'm not sure. Late 2018, after he loses his job, this is where he becomes infatuated with a cam girl, Bulgarian webcam model, Sylvia Venceslavia. Is that right? But also known as Sylvie, so we will be calling her Sylvie moving forward. So you got to imagine what Grant is feeling right now. His younger brother is advancing his career, doing really well. Both his parents are doing really well. His older brother Jason has moved out and is also have a successful career. So he's probably feeling not so great about himself right now. And remember, he's like 29 right now. So he's a grown man. He's been a grown man for a while. Right? So he's probably looking for validation. He's looking for worth. He's looking for someone to tell him what he wants to hear. So he, goes on camgirl.com and finds Sylvie. Now, if you've never been on a camgirl site, which I haven't been, but I did my research, right? So what you do is you pay money, you get like tokens, and then you can use the tokens to like buy, like private chats and buy them gifts and send them money, to get their attention, right? So Grant started to spend money trying to get Sylvie's attention. He was also heavily, there's like a community of people like on the camgirl scene, right? He was also heavily involved in that community as well. So he would be talking to people on that platform, and, he was kind of making himself out to be this like hot shot, with a crap ton of money, and that was the opposite of what was happening. So he started his journey of addiction here, and it just escalates from here. So after Grant runs out of his own money, he starts stealing from his family. Now, it's important to note, A, he's 29 years old. B, he's still living at home. C, doesn't have a job. Just a real winner here. So he starts accessing his parents' bank accounts without their knowledge, and starts draining their checking account. So they start to realize pretty quickly that there is not as much money as there was before. And they confront him about it, and they get to know that he's like basically addicted to seeing Sylvie. So they kind of like say, okay, you need to stop, And then Grant starts accessing their savings account and completely drains his father's savings account. Well, I guess parents' shared savings account. It's not just his father. And then after they find out that that's drained and try to put an end to it, he then starts forging checks in their name. Can you imagine this? Like, first your kid drains your bank account, and then your savings, and now he's writing forged checks, which you could be held like legally liable for, if you're writing bad checks. But luckily they were able to figure that he was doing that and tried to stop him and tried to convince him, and intervene. And then when the bad checks didn't work, Grant started taking out loans in his family members' names as well. So not only do you have nothing in the bank, you have all of these fake checks written, and now you have loans that you need to start paying off in your name, and you have no idea You have no idea who took them out. Yeah, it was Grant. And now you got to start making payments on those as well. I'm not sure what what Chad was being paid at his job, but like it was nowhere enough to keep up with this spending. And then when Grant ran out of those options, he stole the family's credit card numbers and started using their credit cards without their knowledge. So it just started racking up and compiling and compiling and compiling. I can't. And this is all within months. Like this isn't years. This is like days, weeks. Like I can't imagine the stress that Chad and Margaret were under. And all to their credit, they were very patient with Grant. We'll see. They tried everything to help him. And, I think this was a very loving family. And, it just didn't work in the end, which, it's so stressful. So Grant eventually racks up a total of $200,000. $200,000 within a matter of weeks he spends on Sylvie. Leading to a significant financial strain on their entire family. And not only like financial strain, but like just emotional strain. Like, how could you do this to your own family, So end of December, 2018, this is all kind of coming out. Like I said, it's all in a matter of weeks, months, that this has all happened. So like I said, I think this family, especially the parents, Chad and Margaret, they really tried their best with Grant. And again, Grant is like 30 years old. He is a grown man and has been for a while, and they are still trying to help their child. So December 2018, Grant's family finally discovers everything, right? And they send him to a rehab facility for internet and pornography addiction. The rehab facility is the Fort Lauderdale's Cornerstone Recovery, and reportedly costs $15,000 for a 60-day program. So he, tried to go, and again, his family is shelling out this money to help their child. And I mean, we all know how this ends, right? So all for nothing, And later we'll see, like, Grant doesn't even have, like, remorse about, like, what is going on here. Like, psychologically, it's puzzling, to see what's going on here. Anyway, so he ends up getting kicked out of Cornerstone Recovery in late 2018, so the end of December. And he is then sent to his aunt's to live because his parents need a break, for just a few weeks. And while he's there, he steals his aunt's credit card and racks up $60,000 worth of debt on her credit card. So we're at about $260,000 right now. And, the aunt calls Chad, and tells him what happened. And he is, like, please don't file a police report. I will pay off the loan. It'll take me a while, but I will pay you back. So he is sticking his neck out for his kid over and over and over and over again. And I just don't understand why this case ends up the way that it does. It doesn't make any sense to me. January 2019 is when Grant returns back to the family home. However, under very strict restrictions by his parents. He doesn't really have access to the computer. He cannot contact Sylvie. And as long as he follows his parents' rules, then they can start to, like, work their way through what Grant has done. He also has to get a job, which I don't think Grant wants to do. Again, he's 30 years old, everyone. 30. So he's under his parents' roof for a little while, and he is discovered to have still been in contact with Miss Sylvie, which we'll find later. I'll talk about this a little later. She didn't really know anything that was happening, right? So don't blame Sylvie. Oh, please don't blame Sylvie. So Grant had still been contacting Sylvie, and his father finds out, and Chad confronts Grant. This is January 24th, 2019. He kicks Grant out of the house and basically says, you have to get out. Like, I've done everything I can for you. I don't know what else to do. You won't stop. So you need to get out. So this escalates things to a very deadly tone. And when Chad and Corey leave the home, Grant sneaks up on his mother, who is seated at the computer, and shoots her in the back of the head. She didn't have any time to react. She probably didn't even know he was there. And he just killed his mother, which, wow. The coward. He then waits for his father to come home, and upon Chad entering the kitchen, Grant then shoots Chad twice in the chest. I'm sorry, not in the chest, in the head, immediately killing him. Then, which I think is this is all unforgivable, but the most unforgivable is, in order to kill Cody, he lures his younger brother back to the house, using his father's phone to send Cody a message, creating the impression that Chad needed assistance with something. So Cody heads back to the house. He arrives, seems like through the garage door, and Grant immediately shoots him under the eye, leading to his death. He falls there in the hallway and unfortunately passes away. So, R.I.P. to Margaret, Chad, and Corey. Their deaths were so senseless. And I'm sorry I'm laughing. I'm just like baffled by... To make this situation even more diabolical and freaking terrible, Grant positioned his brother's body in a way where it would, at first glance, suggest that this was a murder-suicide, with Cody being the assailant. So he positioned the gun next to Cody's body. First glance, right? But, we're a little smarter than that. Anyways, January 25th, the next day, 2019, Cody's coworkers report him missing from work, and being the good Samaritans that they are, they report that to the police, and the police conduct a welfare check at the Amato residence. I think that Cody had probably confided in his coworkers. There was just so much turmoil going on at the Amato house, and he loved his brother, so I think he probably told someone, right? And when he didn't show up for work, that was very, very concerning. Cody was very responsible, and he wouldn't just no call, no show, right? So just another testament to who Cody was. When the police got there, they see one of the bodies through the window, so they immediately gain access to the Amato residence, and they find Cody, and then also Margaret and Chad's body as well. Again, like I said, at first glance, it looked like a murder-suicide, but, the way the bodies were positioned, the bullet trajectories, and the lack of a real struggle led investigators to suspect Grant almost immediately. So a manhunt ensued for Grant Amato. So Grant is on the run. January 26th, so the very next day, only 24 hours after this manhunt started, they locate Grant at a hotel in Orange County, Florida, and he is taken into custody for questioning and subsequent arrest on charges of first-degree murder. Trace times. So he is caught and in custody. So yes. Only a few months later, July 15th, 2019, Grant Amato's trial officially starts, which I'm glad they got right to it. The prosecutors present digital evidence, including data from phones and computers, to establish a very good timeline of the murders, and I think a very, very good case. So what did they present during the trial? So one thing that they presented, his alibi and his timeline did not add up. Sorry, Grant. Grant initially told detectives that he had left the house January 24th, 2019 at 9 p.m. to go stay at a friend's house. However, surveillance footage and digital records showed that he was still at the home well into early morning hours of January 25th, the time when the murders occurred. So his alibi was not not very solid. His car was also not spotted leaving the area at the time he had claimed as well. So strike one for Grant here. Also, another thing that they pointed out was his behavior after the murder. So Grant claimed that he had no idea what happened to his family and suggested that Cody may have killed their parents while taking his own life. Wow. Wow. Jump into that one real quick, Grant. However, detectives noted that Grant showed no real emotion when expressing this or concern when he was informed that his family, his entire family, except Jason, were murdered. He also never called 911 or attempted to check on his family after allegedly being away for a day. So yeah, if he had any kind of inkling or anything like that, he didn't really show any kind of paper trail there that he was any bit of concerned about his family. Another thing that the investigators brought up was there was no forced entry into the Amato home. But Grant was the only one missing during their investigation, so investigators found no signs of forced entry at the Amato house, meaning that the killer was likely someone with access. The house was locked, but Grant was the only family member unaccounted for when the police arrived, so it doesn't look good for you, Grant. Another thing is that Grant claimed that he was kicked out of the house, so I stated that him and his father had an argument before the murders occurred, and he claimed that his dad said that you're no longer welcome in this home, which I don't know if that's true or not. I can believe kind of either side, but if this is coming from Grant, probably shouldn't believe that part. Grant told investigators that his father kicked him out for good and he was staying with friends permanently. However, his family members had told others that he was still living there, but under strict conditions, like not seeing Sylvie anymore. Just stop, Grant. Which meant he was inside the home when the murders occurred. So, again, not looking good for you, Grant. And then we come to the staged suicide. Grant suggested that Cody might have killed their parents and then himself pretty quickly into this. However, forensic evidence proved that the scene was staged. The gun was placed next to Cody's body in a way that was inconsistent with a suicide. Cody had also shot in a manner that didn't match self-inflicted gunshot wounds. So there was just no way that Cody could have pulled the trigger himself to kill himself. And so it just didn't make any sense. There had to be someone else there. If Cody shot his parents, then somebody else shot Cody. So it just wasn't adding up for investigators. None of this was adding up. None of this story was adding up. And then the biggest thing of all was who had a motivation to kill all these family members. The only person we can think of is Mr. Grant Amato. His financial motive and continued contact with Sylvie is really what did Grant in. Grant claimed that he wasn't obsessed with Sylvie and that he had stopped talking to her as his family demanded. However, investigators found that he continued communicating with Sylvie until using stolen money after the murders. He stole $8,000 from Cody's account after he murdered his parents and Cody to buy tokens to contact Sylvie. So he has opportunity, he has motivation, he has, yeah. Another thing that I wanted to quickly mention about the trial, Jason, the older brother, did testify in a very emotional testimony. He recounted that the family was trying everything they could to help Grant overcome his issues and his addiction, and he didn't understand why this resulted in the murder of his entire family. He lost everyone. He lost his parents, he lost Cody, and he lost Grant after all of this. So these accounts underscored the personal toll of the tragedy and provided insight into the family dynamics. He really gave a lens to the jury as far as like what they tried and what they did to help Grant. And I think ultimately, with everything else piled on top of that, that is what sunk Grant in the end, is like, why did this have to happen? So the sentencing. So while the prosecution sought the death penalty, the jury did not reach a unanimous decision required for such a sentence. So consequently, on August 12th, 2019, Grant Amato was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for each of the 3 counts of first-degree murder. So justice was served in this case, thank goodness. And he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Was it worth it, Grant? Was it worth it? I mentioned this before, but I just wanted to kind of solidify what I said earlier. Sylvie had no idea what was happening with Grant. She was completely unaware of the lengths that he went to maintain their relationship, including the financial theft and ultimately the murder of his entire family. So she was not implicated in any sort of wrongdoing, and she was let go. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows, like, don't blame Sylvie, right? So Grant Amato is currently serving his sentence at the Florida State Prison in Rayford, Florida. This facility is known for housing inmates serving long sentences for serious crimes. It is a maximum security prison. Good. And Grant is serving life without the possibility of parole due to the murders of his family members. Now, Grant did file an appeal in 2020. His defense team challenged the verdict and the life sentence. They tried to overturn the conviction and reduce his sentence, but as of now, there hasn't been really any news about that appeal. I don't think it's going to get approved. Like, why would you approve it? Grant has never showed any type of remorse for killing his family. And again, like, was it worth it, Grant? Was it freaking worth it? Like, you're in a prison now with all dudes. Like, so how's that, addiction going? Probably not well. So anyways, it's just like a tragic case all around. This was for nothing. Absolutely nothing. So in every other video, I like to kind of end on the person's legacy and kind of go into, something inspirational, right? But since this case is a little different where there is 3 victims instead of 1, so I want to kind of talk about each of them briefly, and then we can kind of get into maybe some resources that you guys can access if you are in a type of situation like this. So let's start off with the father, Chad. In the days leading up to his death, Chad was described as a dedicated father who did his best to help his children, particularly Grant. He had an emotional conversation with his son where he expressed concern over his behavior and the damage that it was causing the family. One quote from a family member recounts, "Chad loved his kids deeply and tried everything he could to help them. He was devastated by Grant's choices." So you can just see that he did everything he could to try to help his son. He was a very caring and protective father, and it's just, even when you do everything right, it can still end up like this, which is terrifying, especially as a parent. So stay strong if you're a parent out there, right? Okay, let's move on to Margaret, the mother. During the difficult times when Grant's behavior was spiraling out of control, Margaret's desire to see him get better was very, very clear and apparent by her actions. In court testimonies, it was shared that Margaret had pleaded with her son to turn things around. One of her emotional messages to Grant was, "We just want you to get better. We're doing this because we love you, but you need to stop." So you can just hear the desperation in this mother's voice, trying to get her son back and trying to emphasize her love for him. She tried everything she could, just like Chad did, to help her son, and in the end, it didn't work. But I don't think it was all in vain. I think the message of being a good parent is very apparent here. You should try to do everything for your kid. Even if it doesn't work out, you need to be there for your children. Okay, so last but not least, let's end with Cody. So on the bond between him and Grant, before the tragic events, Cody was close to his brother. In an interview, Cody spoke about their shared interests and how they used to work out together. One of his notable reflections was, "We were always so close. I thought we had a good bond, especially when we trained together. I never thought things would get this bad." Which made me choke up a little bit just now. Like, it was about to get very, very worse for their relationship. Grant would ultimately murder Cody. And not only murder Cody, but stage the scene to make it seem like Cody had murdered his parents as well. Which, is so twisted. Even his brother was deeply concerned about him. This whole family was so supportive. And it just makes this tragedy even more painful to talk about. So anyway, so rest in peace to Margaret, Chad, and Cody. Again, I hope they are at peace now and are at peace with what they did in this life. They did everything they could, and there was no stone left unturned for them, and hopefully they're in paradise now, and they're together and at peace. I will end with this. During the trial, there is a quote about this family that I really liked. So they were loving, hardworking people. Chad and Margaret were parents who gave their all for their kids. Cody was an amazing brother who would have done anything for Grant. So again, just a testament to who this family was. And that kind of leads me into my next point where, what happened with Grant here? like psychologically. He was never formally diagnosed with anything, but I think mental illness had a lot to do with what happened here. And if you are experiencing anything like this, you know, like if one of your loved ones is struggling with addiction or delusion or like a lack of remorse for anything, you know, those are some serious red flags. There are resources available to you if you need it to, you know, reach out and get help for your family member or maybe yourself. I don't know. But I am here for you if you need it. So I will link those resources below for you guys if you need it. So, okay. So let's look at the finished piece. Oh, okay, so this is a lot different than I usually do. I did a landscape last time. This is a cityscape of Japan, or one of the Japan streets. So Cody loved to travel with Grant, and they did take a trip to Japan. So I thought that Cody would have really liked this picture of a late night street in Japan. So Cody, I hope you like it. Chad and Margaret, you too, of course. Alright, I will put it with the others. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this one. This one wasn't as fun as they normally are. Are they ever fun? But I hope you like this one as much as I did. I'm really starting to get in my groove with these videos, so I hope that you are enjoying how often I'm putting them out, and I hope that everyone has a good rest of their day. Be kind to one another, be a good person, and I hope I see you in the next one, everyone. Love you. Bye.